Okay, so we are live now, and hello everybody, and for those who've been able to join, thank you. In today's session, I have with me Dr. Edward Kwam and Dr. Olumide Kubadejo. And one thing we all have in common is some years ago we were actually all studying in the same university in France, but I met each of them at different stages in my life. But that's one thing we all have in common. So before we start the session and the purpose of the session, I'd like to know both of you, how is your French going?
I
I
think my French is
well, you can go first.
okay. I think my French is okay. I can survive. Although I hate to talk about technical stuff in French, I think my brain just freezes every time. I probably have to explain maybe machine learning to somebody, and then it's French. It's all over the place. But day-to-day conversations is very okay.
Ok. Et Edward et toi?
Pas mal. So I'm not getting opportunity to practice, as you know. So my French is very rusty right now. So yeah, that's it. I don't practice much, so I've lost most of my ability to speak the language.
Ok. Donc, pas possible, on va continuer en français. Pas possible?
Merci.
Oh, on peut continuer.
Ah,
On peut continuer, hein,
Oui, je
ça
peux
va.
parler
ah
un peu, hein.
génial.
Je peux
Ok,
parler un peu.
d'accord. Si c'est bon pour le D, je suis prête pour commencer la
Ah,
Ah, je
c'est
suis
conversation
là.
en français.
Ah ouais, c'est là. On
allez-y.
commence.
Okay, you are acting like you are good, but I know that deep down, you're not ready for this. So I don't want to put you guys on the spot. So we just go back to English. So the purpose of this session is there's quite a lot of misconception about what it means to have a PhD. Most people feel that it's also another level of going to school. Like even for me personally, like when I tell people I'm having a PhD, we're like, if you go to school, aren't you tired? But for us who are actually in the process or who have finished the process, we know that a PhD is not necessarily really school. In as much as we are in the universities, we know that it's not really school. So the purpose of the session is to educate the public about what it means to have a PhD. And there are also some myths surrounding a PhD, like once you do a PhD, the only thing you can do is to go into to be a professor, to become a teacher. And it's difficult for you to get jobs outside because most companies are scared to employ you or they can't pay you because your level of education. So the purpose of this session is to educate people, one, what it means to do a PhD, and two, like how is it possible to transition and how can you transition as well as the opportunities available. And before we start, I'll give you guys a chance to introduce yourself. Then we can hear this conversation rolling. So who wants to start?
I think Edward should start this time.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll go first. This sounds like a tell me about yourself kind of question. From
Exactly.
yeah. So my name is Edward Arthur Quam. Dr. Edward Quam. You can call me Edward. I'm fine with that. So I'm a data scientist. I build end-to-end data science applications. I have a PhD in numerical optimization from University of Texas at Arlington. In my current role as a data scientist, I leverage optimization to build predictive models. That's what I do on a day to day. I have a master's from Grenoble, rightly so, Barbara. And I went to the same school, Grenoble Alps, University of Grenoble Alps. Spent about a year over there doing a master's in control systems and information technology. Really great experience for that's like a year's experience, amazing opportunity over there. Prior to that, I have a undergraduate education in Ghana, electrical engineering for 4 years. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Yeah, I think I'll stop there.
So Dr. Kubalajayo, your turn.
Yeah. Yeah, my undergrad was in electrical and computer engineering. I studied for 5 years in Nigeria. After that, I did a master's in AI in University of Southampton in the UK. There's after that, I did like some months of working. I would say I don't think it was up to a year, and then I started a PhD um, in Grenoble, and my PhD was in the at the boundary of AI, more or less image processing, which I had focused on during my master's, and I was doing image processing, applying it to regular computer science problems, but I was also applying it to civil engineering problems, geomechanics. So it was like a new new application field. That's why I met Barbara in that lab. Uh, and now, after my PhD in Grenoble, I started working. First, I was working at a startup as a research scientist for audio, which was interesting because I'd moved through images all my studies, and then I was doing audio, my first job after PhD, and it's fun because what we think about AI is just the data changes, and so does the method change with respect to the data. And after working with images, with sound, I moved and got into Spotify, where I wasn't just working with audio; I was working with MIDI, which I think is at the boundary. I usually say it's at the boundary of audio and NLP, natural language processing. And yeah, while in Paris, I also teach part time, 2 weeks a year at ESIEE in Paris. So yeah, basically.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So, like, the very first question, just to warm us up, like, why did you, maybe I'll start with alumni because you just finished. Why did you decide to do a PhD? And
Mhm.
whilst you were there, what were some of the challenges you faced, especially from family back home?
Mhm. Uh, so I think I wanted to. I always wanted to do a PhD, but not for the reason I thought I wanted to do it. Right. I wanted to do a PhD because when I did my master's in AI, one of the things I realized was it was incomplete. Like there's so much, and then you really can't cover everything at a time. And I felt like, hey, I want to go deep down into this. I want to delve deep down. And that was the first reason why I got into the PhD. Um, and but then doing the PhD, of course, when you get there, you realize that it's something else entirely. So that was like, it's not culture shock, but that was a shock for me, right? Well, my parents wanted a PhD. My parents are African parents, and well, a PhD is status, right? So, so, so they're very happy that you're doing a PhD, even though they don't know what you're doing a PhD in. So there was a lot of support from home because I think it was useful to the community that I finished my PhD. So, and also for bragging rights. So yeah. Uh, so I think that's how I got into a PhD. Also, I know we'll get into it later, but one of the reasons that kept me going was something else. But the reason I got into was because I felt I wanted to go through the length and breadth of AI, machine learning, image processing, and I was excited about it. I was like, yeah, let's do a PhD.
Okay. Because the reason why I asked like how your family felt about it is like, well, for me, I don't know, but like I think for most African parents, the goal is go to school, get a job, and like it's now your turn to get a job and decided to go do a PhD. Or that wasn't really an issue there.
No, I think
Okay.
for me, my parents were more like, "Oh, a PhD is well, it's status." And I think my family, they are very pro education,
Okay,
so
so
I think that
that was my next question. Is your family an academic oriented family? Okay. I guess you're
yeah.
the
So
first person with you're not the first PhD in your family.
oh no,
Okay, yeah, so I understand where you're coming from. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so Dr. Kwam, your turn.
Yeah. So I think I bear some similarities to Olumide. I can relate to most of the things he just said. So my family is an academic family as well. So my dad has a master's. The minimum education between my two parents is a master's. So growing up, my family is very academic. They kind of want you to pursue education to the highest level. For me, the plan was not to pursue a PhD. It was just to get a master's and gets a job, like I guess so many of our listeners right now listening to us. So for me, the decision to pursue a PhD was an after the fact decision that came after my master's, and I did not make that decision until after my master's, right? So I did the master's and completed and decided that, you know what, I want to go into a PhD program instead of going into a job. So yeah, that's the what why did I pursue a PhD after my master's? Well, great question. So the desire to for knowledge is just after my master's was a mix of control systems, systems theory, so predictive control, numerical control, a mix of signal processing, data using data for control basically. And then so after my masters, I still felt like there's more to know about that subject area. And so like after my master's, it was just, and after the fact, it just led to a PhD. I applied for a PhD program and I got accepted and decided to continue on that journey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, what does it mean to have a PhD? So, both of you have a PhD. What does it mean? What does it mean to you? And what does it mean to other people when they ask you, like, if you tell them, "Oh, I have a PhD," how do they get it? What's the perception they have in their mind? So,
Oh yeah, okay, I'll go with that. Well, when I tell people I'm a man, you are so smart. How did you get a PhD? And the first thing that they say, and I actually think that's contrary to the fact. I don't consider myself as the smartest person in the room. I think I consider myself as the most investigative person. Probably there are others, but I like to investigate and dig deeper. So for me, a PhD is a degree that gives you the liberty to investigate and go deeper into a field. Now, if you're someone who has so many questions about a field of study, a PhD is definitely for you because you seem to want to have get answers to your questions, right? So you propose a research topic and you just dig deeper and deeper and deeper until the bottomless pit, right? So you can dig deeper until there's nothing else to uncover, but there's always more information. So for me, the question is, a PhD is a degree that gives you the liberty. In other degrees like a master's, there's a structure. You have coursework, you have to complete a certain number of coursework, and then you have to do some requirements. But a PhD kind of gives you the liberty to pursue diverse research areas into a field of study that you are really passionate about. And yeah, so that's it. That's how I would define a PhD.
okay, and over to you.
Yeah, right. So when I tell people I have a PhD, I think they're always very, you're so young, you're lying, right? Because I mean, in Nigeria, the kind of people that have PhDs, when you do a PhD in a Nigerian school, you have like gray hair all over. It's like a long time, maybe 10 years, and all of that. Everybody's like, you must be joking. So I get that a lot. But I also get a lot of times that um when people know that you have a PhD, or uh, you're in a room, people want to listen to you because they feel like you have the answers, which is not necessarily the case, because you don't need to be smart to have a PhD. I think that you just need more long suffering grit. If you have enough grit and long suffering, you will have a PhD. Really, that's what I think. But basically, what I think in the end it means to have a PhD is, the way I think about it is, in your undergrad, people, you have an exam and people are asking you questions. They want you to have the answers. So undergrad is about you having the answers. Masters is about you having the answers. And then you come into this field of study where it's really, I would say, in the end, the answers, but the most important thing is about you asking the questions, right? And so and so really that changes everything. And so I think a PhD has trained me, or in a way, to ask questions. And so the way I see myself is, oh, I am asking more questions. And so when people expect me to have the answers, I think they're always more surprised because I ask the like largest amount of questions. Say, hey, what are these questions? What are these questions? But at work, it really isn't. Um, it really doesn't change anything because I think everyone on my team has a PhD, like every single person. So it's like we usually forget that there's anything like a PhD is like everybody has it. So yeah, just go and solve problems and ask the right questions. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. Thank you. Thank you. So this was actually also quite eye opening for me. So our next question will be, what are some of the myths of getting a PhD? And this question might be a bit difficult for you because for both of you, like you grew up with a perception that okay, having a PhD is normal. But for others who didn't really have such role models, they really don't. But like, do you guys know some of the myths? I'm sure you could have maybe heard it from other people about having a PhD.
Uh, okay. Let me take this one first. Yeah, I think that one myth I know is about having a PhD is, of course, you have to work in academia. That your a PhD is automatically starting like in a professorial line. You have constrained your future to go that direction. So I think that that's one of the myths about having a PhD. Another myth is that people expect that you to be very smart. I think it's a myth that they expect you to be very smart. Um, and I think the other one that I know is that people, it's not really about having a PhD, but going through the PhD process. People usually think that your professors are there to sort of tell you the answer or you don't know the answer, but you quickly realize after year one of PhD that everybody's looking at you, even you, even your professors.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, they're like, okay, so tell us, what did you learn? I was like, oh, you learned that? Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that. And like, and you're like, God. So if you're stuck, you're stuck, right? So yeah, I think those are the ones that come to mind about a PhD.
Okay. Edward, before you ask something like with your answer, it brought another layer for me. So the other question apart from the myths, what were some of the things you also realized during your journey as when obtaining a PhD? Like maybe before you felt that okay, this was it, but once you were living the process, you realized that okay, this is not it. So this was another layer to the question I asked previously. Apart from the myths, what are some of the things you learned yourself during the journey that was shocking or surprising to you?
Okay. So I think for me, I won't say shocking, but surprising, of course, was the fact that with a PhD, you are not to, you don't make any groundbreaking discoveries, right?
Okay,
There's the idea that everyone has to
to change the
have
world.
like a final thesis like Einstein's thesis. Einstein's thesis is a very popular thesis because that's where he actually proposed the theory of relativity, right? So it's like, it's if that's the bar, every PhD needs to get there. Is no, so for me, you know, a PhD doesn't always result in groundbreaking discoveries. Uh, it could just be adding one dot, one extra research to a whole body of research, right? Just one teeny bit of research to that whole body of research. So yeah, a PhD is not always looking for that special thing. And also, I think the a myth is PhDs are overqualified for position. I think we'll get to that, but actually, that's not the case because um, let's look at the job market and what you actually do in a job, for instance. So Olumide just pointed out something really important is in a job, nobody knows what you graduated with. Nobody calls me doctor at work. They don't care about that. All they care is results. Are you able to produce results? Are you able to solve problems? So the qualification really doesn't count. no one looks at your qualification. Did you complete with a bachelor's, a master's, or a PhD? It's it's not considered. It's a non-factor. So does it over qualify you? It might sometimes, depending on the recruitment process, but when you get into the job, it really doesn't show and it doesn't count. So I think that's a myth that many might have with PhDs is, oh, I'll be overqualified. I won't get a job because I'm too qualified for the position. You are already going to go through a period of training, sometimes 6 months training before you are on the job for real. So yeah, that's some myth that I can point out.
Okay, so to follow up on this, did you both of you did you know you always wanted to go into the industry or academia? And if not, at what point did you decide that okay, this is the path I want to go? And Olumide, you are roughly into academia, but also Edward, for you, would you plan on going into academia or you are happy where you are right now?
Okay, great question. Should I go first?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. So why did I decide to go in academia? Great question. I just wanted to. I was curious, honestly. So in the field that I work in is very theoretical. Numerical optimization. You are basically working on solvers for problems, optimization problems, and their optimization problems across from every scope of life, right? From transport to civil engineering to life in general, like crowdsourcing, social media. Optimizations exist, medical field, whatever. Optimizations exist across. So the curiosity for me was how optimization concepts can be applied to industry. So that's why I decided to go there, because I had been in academia for 4 years. I pretty much knew what was going on in academia, but industry was like a black box for me. I didn't know what exactly how the industry dealt with hard problems and how they would approach these problems. So curiosity just drew me into industry. So yeah, and the second question was again, sorry.
At what point did you realize that you wanted to go there, and do you
Am I
want to
gonna
stay
go
there? Yeah,
back?
or do you
Okay.
want to?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, industry is very basic. What I mean by basic is industry always looks for the simplest solution to a problem. And academics are always looking for how can I develop the most complex solution to solve this simple problem. And so in like it's a mix of both. I think industry kind of gets boring, to be honest with you, because it's always, oh, how can we make this work and work fast and in the simplest way without complications? But in academia, you're allowed the liberty to go deeper and deeper and propose new ways of solving things. And even if one way works, you want to try another one. And if that one works, you want to try another one and so many things. So would I go back? I would definitely consider it going back to academia for the reason that industry kind of gets very mundane and the same processes. It's all about profits for industry. It's all about value for industry. It's all about making money for industry. And if the approach is not profitable, the business doesn't see a reason to go that approach. They always look for profitability. So that's probably the only reason why I would like to go to academia. I want that liberty to explore.
Okay, thank you. I
Uh,
think Edmond, and just a minute. Edmond is your brother, no? Edmond.
Yeah,
Edmond.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
realize.
he said you really like Luke, so like he was like, yeah, you are gonna go back.
oh
Yeah. So,
my god.
yeah.
I think for me it's so I'm one leg in, one leg out, right?
Okay.
So I did a couple of times, but I just teach because I think I like to teach, and I think that teaching also helps me keep fresh. Like it helps me keep the knowledge fresh in my head, especially when I'm like teaching master students. Like, okay, I really have to make sure that I'm not going to tell them something is wrong, so I have to clarify a lot of times. So it's like a retreat for me. 2 weeks every year, I get this retreat where I sort of take a lot of knowledge from my head and make sure that it's right, and it's still fresh and it's still applicable. Um, but I don't want to work full time in in academia. Maybe as a research. Now I work as a research scientist in industry. I don't want to do that job in academia. I feel like academia doesn't give you. I feel like academia is like an endless sea, without any, without any like lifeline or lifeboat. You're not doing the research to solve, I would say, not a concrete and defined problem that is applicable to at that time. So academia might be saying, hey, there's a hypothetical scenario in the next 20 years, and we want to develop a complex mathematical algorithm to solve that problem that might never happen, most likely will never happen. So academia can just be you chasing shadows every time without any without any end in sight. The reason that I like research, so I think I'm lucky because I do research in industry. The reason that I like it is, yes, you have the ability to do your research. You want to do maybe research for me in how can we generate let's say for instance on the score, remove all the noise in the background. How can we suppress the noise and amplify the voices? How can we make it sound better? When you're doing that research, you're doing it because they want to build it into an app. They want to take it and they want to put it into a product and sell it and make money off it. So you don't have the luxury of spending 5 years, saying that I got a 0.05% gain. But in academia, you can publish a paper on that, right? Um, so it's one of the reasons that I like industry. I feel like it keeps me sharp, and it also keeps me focused on the problem, and it also helps me to simplify solutions. Even if you have a complex solution, there are also other layers of questions that you need to ask. And if you're a person who likes asking questions, you're not just saying, "Can I solve this problem?" You're saying, "Can I solve this problem in a way that is useful, is deployable at this time?" So, industry for me all the way.
Okay, great. So like I have like the diverse opinions and all that. So let's say for me, I want to, after my PhD, I want to go into the industry. What are some of the things I have to start doing now? How do I how do I get in?
Um, Great. So you want to go back into, okay, you want to enter the industry. You're in a PhD program. I feel like one thing you have to do is to gather employable skills, right? And this is not to say that a PhD does not give you employable skills, but there are some in-demand skills that you need to break through into industry. One specific example is data analysis, right? And I wrote that down because data analysis is something every PhD student does, no matter what field you are in. You deal with data, you collect data. Analyzing that data is a skill. And that data and data analysis is a transferable skill, is used in industry as well. So just exploring that skill and realizing that you have that skill is one, because when you enter into an interview, you have to point out that you analyze mountains and mountains of data, terabytes of data, uh, several gigabytes of data, whatever. So whether you are working in sociology, you go collect questionnaires, you do surveys, you need to analyze that data some way or somehow. And so that skill is a skill every PhD student has, and that is easily transferable. So identify those skills, get more transferable skills, software skills. PhDs all use certain software. So you are either using Excel to do your data analysis, you are using some specialized software like MATLAB, like Python, like C++. I don't know, civil engineering, what kind of software you guys have in that, whatever. So that software skill is a skill that you can point out. So what I've realized throughout my pursuit for industry job is it really comes down to the interview. It's not really you prepare your CV so well. You would probably get one or two interviews here and there depending on what kind of job you apply to. But when you get to the interview, do you know what skills you have? Are you able to point out to the hiring manager that I analyze data, I use software, I manage projects? Because you're a project manager, you manage your research project from ideation to completion. It's like a project. That's a project managerial role right there. Although you don't qualify as a project manager in an industry, but that's project management. You're a good communicator because you were able to deliver talks. You present your research topic in conferences. You can do editorial work because you write journals. You are very good with editorial work. Writing very simplifying complex concepts into everyday English. That's what you do as a PhD. So that's where it comes down to the interview. And this is very practical for me because whenever I go into an interview, I make sure that I make it known to the hiring manager the specific skills that a PhD has given me and does not disqualify me from the role. And yeah, so just generally do these things and you will be fine when you're doing it. You want to transition to industry.
Okay. So in summary, I just want to summarize what you said. Like,
Yep.
it's very important that during your PhD, you're able to identify those specific skills that are transferable into academia. An example is like your data analysis skills because you analyze data, your ability to communicate based both written and oral based on the presentations we do and the oral, as well as your project management skills, your software, like all these things is very important that a priori you're able to highlight all these things and communicate well to the hiring manager.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
so for you, you didn't make conscious efforts to really learn anything new for that role. You just banked on all the skills you have acquired in your PhD, if I'm getting you right.
Yeah, so it's industry specific, obviously.
Yeah.
In my PhD, I used Python, which is a software that's also used in industry. I use MATLAB as a software. It's also sometimes used in industry. The concepts are the same. You solve the same problems. I work in the field of artificial intelligence, machine learning. The problem definitions are the same. The techniques is the same. You apply the same techniques in research and the same as industry. So there's no real clear cut difference. It's your ability to point out that, hey, I did this and this and this in my PhD, and it's transferable. A PhD is also, I consider, and many recruiters, I dealt with different kind of recruiters throughout my job application. A PhD in itself is work experience. This is 4 years of work experience where you go in at 9 a.m. depending on what time you go in, and you leave at 5. It's an 8-hour job or 9-hour job, depending on how long you spend there. And so you have to count this as work experience and point this out to that recruiter. And you have to also work on your resume to highlight this as work experience, as in the work experience section. It's not education and blank because you didn't really do any internship, let's say. So yeah, that's generally what I would suggest to people to do if you want to break into industry.
Okay, thank you very much. So this it was really quite eye-opening. I like the way you presented this. So, Dr. Cubana, your turn. Am I pronouncing your name right?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
So I think that was pretty well self-contained. I just want to highlight what Edward said, which I mean, I just want to maybe hit it more, the ability to simplify. There's always the misconception, I would say, that the PhD, you come out with a complex problem, a solution, you've delved deep into something, and then you cannot simplify. You're always, going to move into complex solutions, and not really get to simple solutions, which is what industry likes, because simple solutions are easily deployable. So I think it's something you necessarily need to highlight, especially to your recruiter, that you have that skill. One thing I know that is also good for industry, I think you have to prepare for is when you do a PhD, you spend 3, 4, 5 years, going deep on one subject, right? Just one. You're just deeper and deeper and deeper, and in AI, the two classes of algorithms. Was one is breadth first search, depth first search. It's like you're just going depth, 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 depth. I think that to get into industry, you have to be able to convince your recruiter that you can do breadth, right? That in as much as you're a very good you're very good at what you're specialized in, you're also a good generalist, right? That you can take certain skills from your work and apply to other parts. And what this might entail, let's say for civil engineering, in a sense, would be saying, hey, not only can I use Python, I can use the latest software that does this modeling that I necessarily did not use in the last 4 years. Learning to say, okay, what are these tools? And I think Edward mentioned that, but learning to say, just say, what are the tools that are being currently used? How is industry solving problems? And I'm not saying just adopt it. It's like, how can I combine it? Because I think it's in combining it that, yeah, you're really able to pull from all the advantages of having a PhD. But yes, you also have a good breadth of knowledge of what industry is doing, and how they're solving problems currently, which is not necessarily how academia might be solving it. But then being able to show that you're able to go deep, but you're also able to go wide, is something that will be very relevant. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for highlighting this.
Yeah. And,
So,
I wanted
okay.
to say, like, and just simply, I think in interviewing skills is really underrated. It's
Yeah.
really something you have to work on in your PhD, and it's something everyone has to work on. Period. If you're
Mm.
looking for a job, regardless of PhD, masters, whatever. So when you get into the interview, you need to be able to articulate exactly what you've done over the
Mm.
PhD program to the hiring manager, to convince the hiring manager that you are the one for the job. And
Mm.
it's what everyone has to do in a PhD, in an interview. So just focus on building that. For example, like every job requires on the job learning or training. As a PhD, you have that advantage because you can get into a new field and learn whatever it takes within a few months. You've done that over 4 years. You have done that, so you have to point out that specific aspect of what you've done. And so,
Mm.
like, I think work on your interview skills, get the know how to interview, period, and know how to get jobs. Because
Yeah.
yeah, you will get the interviews, but if you don't have the interviewing skills, you won't get the job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So now let's move on to the next question. And the next question, the next discussion is, okay, just a question. I just want to, there's one question that came in, so we could look at that before I ask my question. Can you see it or I should read it for you?
Oh yeah, I can see it. So the
I can
question
say
is,
it.
Okay, so the question is with regards to Edward's point, should a PhD dissertation should your PhD dissertation should it be an intentional one, like your thesis, or placing emphasis on the field you want to work in? So let's say you want to work in a particular field. Let's say you want to work in machine learning. Should your PhD thesis be on machine learning? Basically, that's what the question is saying. Should there be a link between your future job and your PhD thesis?
absolutely, I think so. Yes. Um, that's exactly what you want to pursue your career in. So it's just an advantage for you to work in that area and get the skills you need to break into that particular field of study. So yeah, I think the answer to that is a simple yes.
Okay. And Okubadajo, do you agree to that?
Yeah, broadly, I would say that yes, there could be a few like semantic differences, like maybe like for instance, I worked on one kind of data and now I'm working on another kind of data. The algorithms that I use, are probably largely the same. And the thoughts or the processes I use are largely the same. So you could have some of those differences, right? And but in a sense, it's relevant to have both of them aligned, um, and that's what you learn on your PhD or what your dissertation is on should somehow link to what you're working on or what you want to work or the field you want to work in or the industry you want to work in.
Okay. Thank you. Just a follow-up question to that too. So, or you can still have a dissertation topic in a whole different field, but still acquire the employable skills for a different field. Like, I'll let you talk, but like for me, in as much as I think it's important, I don't think it's always necessary because at the end of the day, it's your transferable skills. And as you said, most of these skills can be transferable. And I could use Okubada J as an example. Like his PhD was on image processing, but he's working in audio. He had, I don't know, but I don't think he had prior knowledge, but he has certain skill sets on analyzing these kind of data, and he was able to leverage on that in his work. So I think also, as Edward said, it's all about how well you are able to communicate, and most of the skills you have training, so you should be able to learn it. Like for me, that's my take on that. If you have any other text, you could share it, or we could look at the next question.
Yeah, no, not exactly. Can go on.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, so the next question is I want Edmond, I hope you've been answered, and if you are not clear, you could just ask again. So the next question is I want to ask if you should factor in your industry plans when applying to a specific PhD program.
Okay. Do you want to take that?
So factor in your industry, your plans for industry, like what you want to do. Yeah, I think so. I always knew that I wanted to work in industry, so I had those plans. One of the way that I did it was in as much as I was doing my PhD, I kept up to date with the latest tools, or I had like second, like I was always learning. And the thing about the field I'm in is that if you snooze, you lose, right? If you go 1 year and then you really don't know what's going on, well, you're out. I see you later. And so, but I always kept up to date because I knew that I wanted to get into industry. Um, and so, yes, it was something that I've always known, and it was why I did my PhD in something that was applicable. That's why I did my PhD in something that I felt like was concrete. It was why I did my PhD not in maybe theoretical physics or something, deeply theoretical, but something that I had to write some code. I had to show that what I built could work. I had to show that I was solving a problem. I had to show that I was pushing the boundaries of research, but in a way that industry could appreciate the work that I'd done. And so when choosing the topic, I was very careful to put all this into perspective. Yeah.
Okay, Edward, you want to say something? If not, I want to ask.
No, I think it's perfectly
Okay.
answered.
So my follow-up question is like we know that doing a PhD is quite intensive. So how are you able to get to the time to keep to concentrate on your PhD as well as to keep up-to-date information about what was going on? How did you do it? Did you have a system that you could share with us?
Yeah, so yeah, I have a system, which is basically I always say this is what I want to learn, and it's a system I still use now, and then
Mhm.
I spread it on my calendar, or I create habits. So, basically, what I was doing then was every morning I wake up, I had 30 minutes of blocked time to read a certain article, to look at a certain code base, to see a new software, to see a new API, I block that time on my calendar, and that was it's something I've always been very intentional about, and it's something I'm still intentional about right now because right now I work in industry, and there's an incentive not to read papers as you've been reading papers, in academia. But I have blocked time on Friday. Everyone knows Friday is paper reading day for me. Nobody pings me for useless information. Like everyone just, I'm like, hey, today is a reading day. Today is a day where I read papers and maybe hypothesize. And no, please don't ping me for like, don't put crazy meetings on my calendar. It's not going to work. So it's all I've always done that using habits, and I still do that using habits. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay, that's great. That's great. Edward, do you have anything to share, or we should move on to the next question?
Just the same ideas. I think blocking out time on your calendar is very effective. Plus a PhD is really intensive, especially in a science field. Mine was very intensive. I can't overemphasize it. Reading concept like optimization concepts is really, really challenging. The applied math field is a very challenging field for research. So how can you get additional time? You just simply have to make additional time. I would block out some time to do courses on Coursera, Udemy. So I would block out some time, do some, although, my research did not involve some kind of database work. I would block out some time on Coursera to learn databases, to learn how to use SQL, to learn some complex SQL commands on there, some new concepts on AI and all that. So you just simply have to make time, because it goes back to my initial point. You have to get industry ready skills, in demand skills. If these skills are not part of your research, you have to find ways and means to get them. And you also have the luxury of time on your side, because you have 4 years. Although it comes around really quickly, if you're able to plan your time in your PhD program, by the end of your 4 years, you actually could be an expert in some other area, like databases, for instance, if you're really diligent on that. So that's something rightly that you have to do, block out some time for that.
Okay, thank you. So my next question is like, how do you identify the right position for you? I don't know, like the jobs you are in. Was it what you envisioned? Like, was it that okay, when I'm done, this is the kind of job I want to do? And if not, what was it that you envisioned, and what are you doing now? And how did you know that this would be the right position for me?
It wasn't automatic for me. So I worked in optimization. I always go back to that, and optimization is broad. It's applied across, from healthcare, to image, to whatever. Like every field has some idea of optimization in there. So for me, it wasn't. I did not readily know where I could work. So, and applications, job applications is a numbers game. So you apply, and some of them get rejected, and some of them come as interviews. So eventually you realize that you seem to be getting some type of jobs because of your profile. So let's say you want to get into AI, but your profile is more civil engineering. You've worked in concrete as you are currently, or some other field. You realize that you are getting that area, the interviews in that area, but you are not actually getting the AI interviews. So it's by virtue of applying, you will find yourself in a certain area, and then it's just automatic that you gravitate towards that area, except maybe you edit your resume in a way to get the AI jobs, or to get any other industry job. So it's just, for me, I interviewed across. I interviewed in energy. I interviewed in operations research. I interviewed in transport. I interviewed across from different industries, from manufacturing and what have you. So eventually, I think I figured my way around things, and identified where I really want to be.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And you, Edward, do you have anything? Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that he said it all really.
Okay.
I think that Edo said it all. Yeah.
Okay. So before we take this next question, I wanted to ask: did LinkedIn play any role in getting a job? How did you use LinkedIn, or where did you find these job openings for your interviews? So, Ebolamide, I think I'll let you take this one.
Oh yeah, LinkedIn was central, like super. I think it was like my holy grail at the time. Uh, so before I got into starting to looking for job, I started a bit early. The final year of my first year, I started like 9 months before my my defense. Was looking for a job, and that was because I can be very nerdy. So I said, oh, every distribution would central limit theorem would say every distribution, when the sample size is large enough, would approach like a Gaussian. So it's like, hey, to get a job, I need to send like large enough. Just keep sending out those applications, and they should be as large as possible. And what my maths is telling me that I would finally get one right after some time. Yeah. So it was LinkedIn. I was using LinkedIn. I had a spreadsheet because I needed to track what CV I sent to what company, and because I was applying everywhere. I think I did a total of about 290 applications. So it's like, just send it everywhere. uh I was using LinkedIn because it's super easy. I had all those this the emails telling me about the job openings. I could also track sometimes some of the jobs that I'd applied for. I could also use the easy apply feature, um which was very useful because that, I think, is one of the reasons I could send that many applications out in the first place. So LinkedIn was it. It was just it for me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
LinkedIn for me was also super pivotal, like instrumental. I got my job on LinkedIn. My current job, I got it on LinkedIn. I got so many interviews from LinkedIn. So how do I use LinkedIn? Interesting. So I use LinkedIn to boss hunt. So there's a technique called boss hunting, which is to message the hiring managers that hire for the positions. So there are two ways. You either message the recruiters who are recruiting for the positions, or you message the hiring managers who are actually hiring for these positions. So with I subscribe for LinkedIn Premium. That's something that I did personally. So with LinkedIn Premium, you get to see who posted the job, and you get to see their email addresses if they allow it to be exposed for everyone to see. So I would send emails to the recruiters before I put in an application, and obviously some of them would not respond to you. That's normal. Some of them would respond to you generically, send your application through the normal process like everyone else. Don't send it to me. So yeah, that's something that you have to simply, like, it gives you the edge. Just do that. I did that, and I got interviews through that. So there was this recruiter that I reached out to, telling her, hey, I've seen this job you are advertising for. I'm interested in this position. I feel like I have the skills to be hired for this position. Can I get an interview from you simply? And she said, no, that's not how we work here. Send your application through the normal process, and the application tracking system will just destroy you and shift
yeah,
you out,
yeah.
right? So then, by some means, this recruiter gets back to me and calls me for an interview. So I've sown a seed right there by just reaching out, and then I get the opportunity to interview through that means by boss hunting. So message recruiters, message people who work in the same group in that company, who can introduce you to the hiring manager, who can also introduce you to the recruiter. It's just a link, and then eventually you would get to find you get an interview and you have a better chance of getting that job.
Okay, okay. All right. Thank you very much. So, our next question that was on the screen: did your advisor or supervisor help you with transition into industry? For instance, writing recommendations. So let me, or from your response, no, but like let me just put it across, and if you have any thoughts on that, or even I know some PhDs have like industrial contacts, so maybe putting a call on your behalf.
No,
Um, for me, yeah,
no.
my advisor did recommend me to job for jobs. I got like glowing a recommendation. I think that made a difference for some job offers that I had. Yeah.
I think for me, my advisors at the time had thought that I was going to do a postdoc, and were very happy for me to do a postdoc actually. So it was like, hey, you traitor. uh, but no, I mean, I think I involved them after I got in the job, and they were, in a sense, they were happy that I did get the job, but they did not play any role in, me moving from academia to industry.
Okay, okay, okay. And how is your relationship with them now? Are you guys cool or okay?
Yeah, we saw at a party this year.
Oh, nice.
That's good.
Okay. So like I'm going to like we are almost an hour. I'm just going to ask maybe two or three questions, then we can call it a day. The question is at what stage in one's PhD should one start planning to transition? If this is something somebody wants to do, at what stage do you think it's the best time to start? Maybe contacting recruiters and having informational interviews.
Maybe I should just go
Okay.
first. I think because I think I have a short interview, a short answer. M- for me, it was my final year, and I took the entire year, and that is because I have an approach to learning, which I wanted to use. So for me, it was, hey, keep doing those interviews and keep learning. What the industry is looking for, and keep optimizing. It says it's like, you know, uh, gradient descent algorithm, right? So you keep, up, you take a small step, you see the errors that happen. I take those feedback, those errors. I change maybe my CV, I change my outlook, because I mean, after that time in academia, I honestly, you're already, your mental state, your mind is already like fused into how academia does things. So I took the final year to just keep changing myself and keep optimizing until I finally got a job. So I feel like the transition, I think the final year of your PhD is very important. But I know your final year of your PhD is also very stressful.
Oh yeah.
But I think that it is important to block out time to think about life post the defense, and which is, hey, the job that you're going to get. So um, I used my final year.
Okay. And how easy was it to get a job? Did you get a job immediately after your PhD or it took a while?
I started applying, if I remember correctly, in April.
Okay.
Rejections kept coming. I kept optimizing. Some interviews were in French. It's like, oh, uh, the, there were some interviews. There was one interview that went good, but they asked me to describe my life goals in French, and I realized I'd not thought about it in that language, and
Okay.
my brain froze.
Nice.
But yeah, so I did April. I got my first job in August.
Okay. And when did you finish your PhD in April?
I finished my PhD in November,
Okay. Okay.
so I got my first yes in August.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So Edward, your turn.
Yeah. So during my PhD, I did two internships. So my first internship was in my first year of my PhD, and my last internship was in my final year of my PhD. So I think I when did I start looking for jobs? Okay, so first, the internships really helped me get the industry experience that I have to add to that. So make sure you are trying to get internships while you are in your PhD program, and you can do this depending on the country you are in. Um, I began really seriously applying for jobs. I would say 6 months to 6 months till graduation. So that's when I started, like sometime in September of 2021. That's when I started like really seriously applying for jobs. Did they come immediately? No. So I had like a lot of rejections as normal as normal. Um I just kept on sending. So there are some jobs where I thought, oh, this job I'm so qualified for, and man, I'm like, it's this is me. You know, before I apply for a job, this is me. Really, this is just me. This is everything I've been doing. So okay, I sent an application, boom, there's a rejection. I'm like, how did this happen? So there's always I have to say this. There's always the very successful job applicant. So in my department, where I was graduating with a couple of other students, there was this other student who was banking interviews on a weekly basis. Right. And so my advisor pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Edward, this is a very successful job applicant. Go see what he's doing right and do the same thing." So I went over to him. I looked at his resume. I looked at what he's doing, compared it to my resume. What are you doing differently? How are you getting the interviews? Why am I not getting them? I realized he's going for more career fairs. He's getting involved, in career fairs, talking to recruiters one on one, and I'm not doing all that. So I added that to my repertoire of stuff that I'm doing just to get the interviews, because I knew,
Yeah.
when you get an interview, you have a shot at it. Like we have a
Yeah.
50-50 shot at this job.
Yeah.
If I get into the interview with you as a recruiter, it's pretty much up to me and how I can convince you that I am good for this job. So get through, like, try different things, see what other people are doing that is helping them get the interviews. Try to do the same thing, model your resume after what they are doing, and you will see success. You will find something. Don't be too, don't let your ego, don't get into your head that if you have a PhD, you are so good. No, there's something you are not probably doing right that others are doing,
Mhm.
that you learn from.
Mm.
Okay, that's great. That's great. And thank you. My next question is, how good is your pay? Like we all know, like in academia, we get like chicken change, and how good is the pay in industry? And if it's possible to tell us, like even just a range of like your job, like I know I'm putting you guys on the spot, but just give us a range, like and if you also know the pay in academia to also be really great for us to know, like, okay, what's the difference? Yeah.
Okay. So I think I'll take this one, but I'll just highlight first that, especially in France, and I think in a couple of countries too, the amount of money that you get when you get into your first job after your PhD is the same amount of money that a master student will get on their first job. It's the
Okay.
same. Like, and that is why a lot of people don't go for PhDs. Because, like, hey, after 3 years, you mean, or 4 years, I'm still going to start with this salary that this person who didn't do a PhD started with. Yes, but the data has shown that PhD graduates tend to level up quicker.
Okay.
So they yeah, so after 2 or 3 years, you probably have been promoted twice or three times, because you have a lot of soft skills, and but you're also technically in depth on what you want to on the task at hand. So in France, the data is you get the same amount, um, but you progress quicker along your career path. Um, in France, if you're in tech, uh, after your PhD and you're on your first job, mostly if you're in a startup environment, it will be Europe doesn't pay well. I know that in the US it's way more, but it will be between 45 and 60K a year. That's your first job, and that's why master students will get to, as in tech, uh, in my field. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Edward,
Okay. So PhD salaries is it varies, to be honest with you. So I'm from the STEM field, so I have to put that out there. This is just related to STEM, and specifically also related to electrical engineering because I'm an electrical engineer. Or
Mm.
I wouldn't say software. I'm not a software engineer, so this is not for software engineers. So it varies. A range, I would say between, so okay, so back, let me back up a little bit, because when I was interviewing, right, I did get a couple of offers. I did get some low offers, which you have to first of all identify what is the lowest you can go, or what's the lowest offer for this degree that I am pursuing. Just because you want to enter into industry doesn't mean you have to accept anything that comes, right? So what's the lowest offer, and what is, so I would say a lower range for a PhD in STEM, if you're looking for, I think that you should not be looking at anything less than $80,000 in the United States. Below which I feel is, and this is my personal opinion, below which I feel is undervaluing your skills or the value you bring to the business. And the upper range is you can go as high as you want in the US,
400,
right? But for
1
entry
million.
level, yeah, for entry level, straight out of school, so there's the FANG, the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google Club, which pays
Mm,
through the roof, right? So
mm,
with a job
mm,
like that, you could be starting at 150 sometimes, or 175 to start up with, depending also on what you exactly you're gonna do. So the
mm,
upper range you could start, upper, I'd say 175 as the ceiling. Although I'll not be surprised if people enter in higher than that. It's
okay,
a very specialized field, so I have to. So if this gives anyone any idea, I think just use this range: 80, 85 to 175. That's a big range, to be honest with you.
mm,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. And do you know how much academia, how much like if you
In the
go
United States, academic jobs really do pay well. So that misconception that academic job is chicken change, I think it's not the same. You don't get that feel here in the United States.
everywhere.
Associate professors, assistant professors are actually making their lower range is, there's no assistant professor that I think is making 85. I think some of them are starting off at 120 minimum in the STEM area to, and you could go, I know some professors who are tenured who are making 250, and
okay,
it's really high, but yeah, that's it.
okay, okay. Thank you, thank
So I'm in Nigeria and the power went out.
welcome
Wow.
home. Welcome home. Okay. I think maybe I'm gonna ask just two questions. They are similar, and that how does a career in industry look like, and what's your day-to-day activity like? How does it look like from both of them? Then we could call it a day.
Mhm. Yeah, so the career in industry is very fast paced. It's very result driven. So as I said, no one cares that you have a master's or a PhD or bachelor's. All they care about is your results, and yeah, are you able to deliver and deliver in time or on time? So very fast paced, I would say. You really have to be on top of it, always looking for the fastest solution to a problem. I work in a different area of the business. I don't work in the R&D side of the business. I work in the core business. So the business is always looking to justify value. when you want to launch a product or deploy a solution. How would this add value to the business to make money? That's the bottom line here. The product manager wants to see how can I increase revenue for this business. So it's very fast paced. That's the life of industry. A lot of hire and fire. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of hire and fire. So you have your usual 3 months probationary period where you have to justify if you really are good enough to be in this position. And if you are able to, distinguish yourself within that 3 months, you're good. But you cannot coast. So I see that in academic jobs, there's something called coasting, which is you get to your tenureship and you are coasting. You are tenured as a professor in the university. You can move to any kind of university you want with that same level, and you are coasting. You are like you're not going through the motions, but you are secured. It's that's not the same with in an industry job. Industry job is not really secure as you is might come across. But in the US it's different. You have to really justify yourself, prove yourself pretty much. And when you develop that profile as someone who delivers, then I think you're a little bit safe. You can play it safe a little bit, but there's always a challenge for tomorrow.
Okay, awesome. Oh, your light is back, or your generator?
No, the light. I think the light is back. Yeah, light is
Okay.
back. That's
Okay, okay,
fast.
awesome. Should I repeat the question or you're good?
Oh no, no, I'm good. I think the only thing I want to add is like, is on the PhD you are sole on the you're the sole dictate maybe the dictator and executor of your PhD. When you come to industry, you have to quickly learn how to collaborate much more than you probably did before. And you have to quickly learn. You have to learn things about setting your career goals, your career progression. How do you want to do that? How do you want to communicate? How do you want to collaborate? How do you want to get promoted? You have to start thinking about these things. How do you want to sell yourself? You probably were not doing all of those, and then when you come into industry, you really have to start doing all of those. There's something that came back to bite me because I didn't know how to, sell, some of the things I did, because it's just like, oh, it's very simple stuff. But in industry, you really have to learn how to put yourself out there and how to go with emotions, um, how to be productive, how to be effective too. It's very important. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And this has been a very insightful conversation. I hope all the people who joined you were able to learn, and I'd like to say thank you. So before your final words, in the month of this month and November, I'll have like a series of sessions on the Erasmus Mundus scholarship. I'm just going to show it on the screen for you guys to see. So it's the Erasmus Mundus scholarship is actually a fully funded scholarship. Okay, I'm coming. Your final words to anybody who is doing a PhD and who plans to, even not necessarily to even transition, even if they want to study, if they want to stay in academia, what are the final words to them?
Okay, I'll go. So yeah, there's light at the end of the tunnel for you, PhD students. Um, sometimes the days are long, but yes, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Just persist and continue to don't quit. So I know there's a temptation to quit, and I went through that in my second year of my PhD. Don't quit what you're passionate about. Persist. There's light at the end of the tunnel. If it's finances you're thinking about, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You are gonna find that job. You are not going to be you're not going to be overqualified and unable to land a job. You are going to find something. You're going to be able to take care of your family, to get reach your goals, your financial goals, whatever. So persist and always prepare. Get into interview skills, right? Make sure you are acquiring enough good interviewing skills. Your resume, keep on working on your resume, keep on applying for internships, and you'll be fine. You'll be all right.
Thank you very much. And you?
So yeah, my final words on this will be, um, you have what it takes to get into industry or to stay in academia. Um, you doing a PhD is showing that you have the ability to learn, relearn, unlearn, yeah, that you have the ability to ask the right questions. And this is valuable in academia, and it is valuable in industry, and it is valuable in life, and it is valuable everywhere. Uh, so, just keep doing that. And when you get to the time where you want to get um, into maybe academia or industry, don't stop applying and keep learning from every failure. It would help you to reposition yourself. And in the end, it's really about positioning and how you can communicate who you are. And I think that with all of this, it is possible to get there.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for agreeing to do this with everybody. I learned a lot, and I wish you a good Saturday. And all those who were able to join the session, I would like to say thank you. So once we are done, the video will still be on live, so you could share the links with your family and friends who couldn't make it today. So
Bye.